בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך, and BeEzrat HaShem soon will be Rosh Chodesh Tov. Tonight's shiur will be for a Ilui Nishmat Menucha Bat Akiva, and also for a Lehavdil for Refuah Shlema, for Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim Ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Avi Mori David Ben Isriah, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha Bat Julie, Ayla Bat Marsha, Samuel Ben Marsha, Cephas Ben Marsha, Alexander Ben Marsha, Louis Ben Marsha, and all of Am Yisrael, all of the righteous Noahides, and all the people that continue to watch our shiurim, continue to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and continue to exert as much effort as possible to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we'll see for BeEzrat HaShem today, that there's a lot more work that needs to be done on our own introspection than we could possibly imagine, because while it may be easy to see the flaws in others, it's easy to see what everybody else needs to fix, it becomes much more difficult to see what we ourselves need to fix. So, Baruch Hashem, last week we had the event, and some people from Detroit showed up, in New York and Texas, and some other places, of course, Florida. And although we always wish that there was a lot more people and a lot more significance to each and every single shiur, to each and every single event that we do, each one has specific HaShkafa pratit from HaKadosh Baruch Hu of who's going to show up and what questions they're going to ask and how it's shayach to the rest of Klal Yisrael. And of course, one of the questions that was asked is the old questions that I've dealt with and have sacrificed my life over for the last several years about the whole issue of the wig, and how the machloket between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim, that's a few hundred years old, regarding the modesty of the wig is not really relevant to the argument of today, because neither we nor anyone else that I know that's still alive have the shoulders that are big enough to deal with that machloket. But still, we have been very aggressive and very adamant about the fact that it's lo shayach to Am Yisrael to be involved in wigs altogether in this generation. It's not relevant for Am Yisrael. It's not allowed for Am Yisrael to have any connection whatsoever to the wigs today, regardless of whether they are Sephardi or Ashkenazi. And not because of the issues of modesty, which even though they are an issue, still that's not the real argument. The argument is the fact that after extensive research we've done and have sent people to India and have people that live in India still to this day, and interviews and all types of research that we've done, there is no possibility to conclude any other way the fact that over the overwhelming majority, and by overwhelming majority I mean well over 90% of the wigs of today are coming from the idolatrous temples of India, which a Jew is not allowed to enjoy in any way, shape or form. It's avodah zarah, idol worship, is not only forbidden for a Jew, but it's also forbidden for a Jew to enjoy from idol worship. The only mitzvah that a person can do with something that comes from idolatry is to destroy it. The Gemara in Masechet Sukkah says, what if somebody has an etrog that he got from somebody that was an idol worshiper, and used that etrog as like a sacrifice for his fake god. But since that fake god has a mouth but doesn't eat, has ears and doesn't hear, has eyes but can't see, he can't eat the etrog. So the guy kept the etrog. So the Gemara says, so now he has this idol worshiper has this etrog, and he wants to sell it to you, and or even wants to give it to you for free. Doesn't make a difference. Can you use that etrog for Sukkot? Gemara says, no, absolutely not. Why can't you use that etrog? Because that etrog, in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, doesn't exist. Because the only thing that you can do with that etrog is destroy it. And the mitzvah of an etrog is only if you actually own the etrog. And you cannot own something that doesn't exist. So we see from there that, in many, many other sources, that when it comes to idolatry, there is no permission whatsoever to enjoy, to benefit from it whatsoever. But today we're not really going to deal with that question. The bigger question that we have to ask ourselves, that people always ask, if it's so obvious that the wig is forbidden, it's coming from idolatry, how is it that all of the rabbis out there in the world that are in different keilot, in New York and in New Jersey and in Israel and in all the different places, how come they're not screaming foul? Well, the truth is that there are some that are screaming about it and saying that women are not supposed to wear wigs and are not allowed to wear wigs, but unfortunately, Elohei HaKesef, Elohei HaZahav, the God of money, the God of gold, the idolatry is very strong in the world, and unfortunately people are falling for it. And I don't mean just the crowd, I mean even people that are, in essence, rabbis. How could it be? Perhaps the answer to that has to do with the other big issue that we've brought to light over the last several years and have sacrificed our lives over, is the whole issue of the illegality of the cash advance business, the merchant cash advance business, a corrupt, horrific business that is a predatory business that preys on its own customers. So much so that we have a history that is documented, and BeEzrat HaShem, when the chuva comes out, that is actually already ready now, Baruch HaShem, B'siyata Dishmaya, Rabbi Ephraim already completed it, the chuva that's going to come out, the responsa, that shows, according to all opinions, there is no permission whatsoever to be involved in cash advance. But yet, whenever I mention the issues of cash advance being not allowed, surely there are some people that say, no, but my rabbi said it is allowed. And if you just befriend and talk and consult a Talmid Chacham, a Dayan, surely you can stay in this business. You can make a living, an honest living. Honest living, destroying people's lives by charging them 40%, 80%, 100%, 400% interest rates. That's an honest living. So of course people are going to lie to themselves that this is an honest living, but the truth be told, every single person that Baruch Hashem we had the siyata dishmaya to really talk truth to, that we were able to succeed in getting them out of that business, told me at some point or another, they always knew that the business was corrupt, but the money was too good in order to see straight. So now that answers the question of why the people that are in the cash advance business are having a hard time accepting the truth that it's a corrupt business, even though they don't need to see my shiurim to know that it is a corrupt business. Everybody knows it. Even if you've never seen my shiurim, even if you've never seen anything that I've ever said, you're in that business by default. It's only a matter of time before you know that it's a corrupt business that preys on its own customers. But you have a hard time leaving because of the money. So that answers the question of why they have a hard time. The question is, why do the rabbis that are saying you're allowed to be in this business for all the people that are in essence asking for a rabbinical opinion, how come they're allowing such a thing? Well, there are all types of arguments we can assume. We were never going to know until we know for sure when people actually tell us. But the one thing I can tell you for sure that's shayach to all of us, not just them but also us, is the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, "En adam roeh chova be'atzmo." A person does not see the deficiency in himself. Many times a person is involved in a certain particular situation or has a certain particular character trait, a certain particular issue that's relevant to him, and he can see that flaw in everybody else except in himself. And many times when it comes to Din Torah, it comes to the laws of the Torah itself, a person could easily see that someone else is desecrating the Torah, is going against the Torah, is violating the Torah, whichever way you want to put it, is going against the Torah, while he himself is violating it, but he doesn't realize it. Why? Because it's easy to see it in everybody else. Now, of course, the Gemara in Masechet Baba Metzia brings the whole issue of lending money with interest. Of course, the Torah tells us that a Jew is not allowed to lend money to another Jew with interest, so much so that if a Jew lends another Jew money with interest, everybody that's involved has no share of the world to come. And everyone knows that watches my lecture, no share of the world to come doesn't mean that everything goes blank. like a TV in the 1980s. As soon as the programming was finished, you just have these little white dots on the screen. Today, Baruch Hashem, the Satan is much stronger, so he allows the TV to continue even further than 24 hours a day. But that's also good for us because that allows us to have also the Torah 24 hours a day, Baruch Hashem. So the key is to know that the Yetzirah works overtime. Yetzirah works overtime. And the Torah tells us that every single person that's involved in this lending has no share of the world to come. And what no share of the world to come means is this person goes to Gehenom and doesn't end. And if it's not Gehenom, it's kafakela, because he has to have a certain amount of merits to be in Gehenom. And of course, for those of you that listen to the people that say, oh, but it's limited, it's only 1 year, there's no forever, then you have to explain Korach. Korach, Parashat Korach, we're coming up on it soon. If you look at the Midrash and Parashat Korach, you look at the Gemara and Parashat Korach, you look at anyone that talks about Parashat Korach, you see that Korach is still in Gehenom until this year. And apparently a little more than a year has passed since Korach has entered Gehenom with all of his followers. Needless to say, the Arizal says specifically that there is no end to the specific sentences, especially since the time in Kafakela also has no limitation, where a person can go there for 5 years, for 10 years, for 1,000 years, and this is actually the language of the Arizal. Needless to say, the people that are involved in lending money from Jew to Jew have a very serious problem, and it's not just the lender and it's not just the borrower. It's also the guy, the secretary, that's providing the paperwork. It's the guy that's collecting the money, and so on and so forth. All of those people are in very, very serious trouble. But that's obvious. If you ask anybody that's religious, doesn't even need to be a rabbi, you ask him, am I allowed to lend another Jew money and charge him interest? They're all going to tell you no. But if you ask people, am I allowed to charge a non-Jew interest? You're going to have some mixed opinions. And in fact, most of the time you're going to see an opinion depending on how close these people are to the cash advance business. Reason why? Because this is where the Yetzirah is much stronger. So the Gemara in Masechet Bava Metzia specifically says that the Chachamim have an argument, a whole debate about whether you're allowed to charge the non-Jews interest or not, whether you're allowed, you're not allowed. Shlomo HaMelech already saw that there's problems with this in his day. He made a takana that not allowed to charge interest anybody, not Jews and not non-Jews, because he saw how much of a desecration of God's name this whole business is, and how corrupt the business is altogether, already 3,000 plus years ago. Now, Rabotai Yekarim, Chachamim go back and forth, and what do they end up with? You're going to end up with a couple of opinions. One opinion that Rav Chia, the son of Rav Huna, says that he's referring to a bottom line conclusion, which is if the person is only going to lend money just enough to make a living in the language of the Torah means just enough to literally live, not to live in a 18-bedroom mansion, drive a $250,000 car, and have $50,000 on your left wrist. No. Just to make a living, meaning as soon as you make a deal, just to make enough money to pay rent or mortgage or whatever it is to eat for that month, you're finished. You're not allowed to work anymore. That's one condition, that it's allowed to lend money to a non-Jew and charge him interest. Second condition, that you're actually even allowed to become rich off of it, is if you're a Talmid Chacham, meaning there's no limitation. Since you're a Talmid Chacham, you have limited amount of time that you're working, because most of the time you are learning Torah, and that Torah also protects you from being influenced by these non-Jews that are going to constantly come to you asking you for money and to lend you money, which we're not going to get into in who and what and where. Point being is, if you're Talmid Chacham, then you're allowed to charge interest with no problem. No problem. Now, Rabotai Karim, the Chachamim also say something else. They also say something else, that even if he chooses to lend money to a Gentile in interest and to a Jew interest-free, the Jew takes precedence. There's another opinion. It says technically, You're allowed to lend money to the non-Jew, but make sure you always lend to the Jew first. So as long as you lend to the Jews first, then you can lend to the non-Jew. So now, this is now not by the same Rav. This is by Rav Nachman. This is by Rav Nachman. This is the other opinion. The same Gemara, Masechet Bava, page 71a. So now, they're going to tell you, see, we have a proof. Rav Nachman said that he didn't give any boundaries. He didn't say that you're allowed to only charge this and only do this and all. No, he just said as long as you give to the Jews too without charging them any interest, you can lend to the non-Jews as much as you want. You're right. That's what Rav Nachman says. But why do we have a problem with it? Because that's not what was paskin to halacha. What was paskin to halacha, what the Rambam paskin to halacha, what the Shulchan Aruch paskin to halacha, what all of the Chachamim that have went through this extensively, what do they paskin halacha? What we said first, which is either the person has to only do it necessary for his livelihood, just enough to make a living, or if a person is a Talmid Chacham, just like Rav Chia, the son of Rav Huna, said, point being is that unless a person is a Talmid Chacham, or unless a person literally makes one deal a month, he's not going to be able to survive being in that, permissible to be in that cash advance business. So the question is, since this is so obvious, or it should be so obvious, how come it's so hard for people that are even dayanim, even people that are smart, people that are involved in this? I'm not talking about the people that have never heard of this. I'm not talking about the people that have no idea that this is even happening under their nose. I'm talking about people that are actually consulting and counseling the people that are in the cash advance business, from the Ashkenazi community, from the Sephardi community, the Hasidic community, all the different communities. How come nobody is like screaming foul over this? Perhaps, at the very least, we could all say, "En adam roe chova be'atzmo." A person does not see the obligation in himself. Now, you would think this only has to do with them, but the truth be told, this has nothing to do with them. This has to do with all of us, because we all have the same exact problem. How do we have the same exact problem? Well, let's see where the Chazon Ish is going to take us today and identify the very same exact problem in us, because it's easy for us to talk about the problems of everybody else. They're wearing wigs, they're charging interest, they're doing things that are going to cause Chilul Hashem, lose Olam Haba. Very easy to do that over and over again. But let's just see if we could do some introspection and perhaps arrive at a similar conclusion with ourselves, that we too have some work to do, BeEzrat Hashem. The Chazon Ish, in chapter 4 of this Sefer Emunah V'Bitachon, in the study of morals, Torah Tamidot, in section 2, says, after he told us that in reality, while everyone looks at the different character traits as being separate, your anger, your stinginess, the arrogance, all of the different types of flaws that a person has, or all the different good things that a person has, perhaps people look at it as separate. He says, yes, technically they are all separate in order to identify different flaws or pluses and minuses in a person, to identify the level of spiritual sickness. But as far as the cure is concerned, a person must know that in reality there is only one cure and to everything. One cure. What is it? A decision that each and every one of us needs to make. Are you going to acquire the best midah that exists, or are you going to acquire the worst midah that exists? Are you going to acquire the best character trait? That's what a midah is. Are you going to acquire the best character trait that exists, or are you going to acquire the worst character trait that exists? That is going to determine where the rest of your life eternally is going to go. Why? Because the Chazon Ish explains, simply put, if a person has anger, stinginess, arrogance, whatever it is, lack of cleanliness, all types of different things, that's all fine and dandy. Each one of us has a few different flaws. The reality is the reality. Every one of us is born with a few little scratches here and there. But that doesn't have to stay that way. Staying that way actually requires a person making a decision. And that decision is to simply leave everything as is. If he says, listen, I was born angry and therefore I'll stay angry, I was born jealous and therefore I'll stay jealous. I don't even see myself as jealous. It's just me. I'm just being real. I'm just being honest and all types of things like that. I have an evil eye. You call it an evil eye. I call it a being realistic and honest and brutally honest with them even. I'm trying to do them a favor. That's the way he looks at it. Chazon Ish says that person will eventually turn into the worst person, most corrupt person on planet Earth. Why? A simple decision on one of his character traits that he's just simply going to leave it alone. He's not going to work on it. He's not going to fix it. He has no interest in fixing it, no desire to fix it. And in fact, many times you ask him about it and he says, I don't even need to fix it. He says because he decides to simply let things be on this, he'll also let things be on everything else, and little by little, everything else will become worse and worse. Hence the reason why the Gemara says that the ignoramuses of the world, they deteriorate as they age. Whereas Talmidei Chachamim, they become sharper over time. They become better over time. Why? Because the Talmid Chacham, the scholar, continues to work on himself. Whereas the ignoramus doesn't work on himself, already has decided that he's not going to work on himself, and therefore his character traits continue to deteriorate. He could have been 30, 31, 32, and just a little bit racist. He didn't like people that had a different shade of skin than him. He didn't like certain people that came from a different part of the world. He didn't like people that spoke a different language that he didn't speak. He didn't like it, but he was only 30, 31 years old. And he decided, I'm good with this. I'm okay with this. Well, as you would know it, anyone that knows old men that have been around the block, that are part of all of these, this world that we live in, they enjoy themselves by joining all of these Freemasons and Bilderbergs and Skull and Bones and all of these different organizations that a Jew is forbidden from being involved in. But nonetheless, you meet any of those old men and you're going to find out one thing. Not only who he is, but who he was 50 years ago, 30 years ago. He was just a lesser worse version than he is today. Today he's the worst he's ever been. If he was racist 50 years ago, today he's much more racist. Today is much more horrible. Why? Because it continues to deteriorate. Same exact thing with people that are adulterers. Same thing that people that are, thieves. Same thing that people that simply accept themselves as they are and they don't want to develop it. You see them becoming worse as they age. Hence the reason why it's very difficult to deal with older people, because typically, if they're allowed to be free with their speech, with their opinions and so on, they're extremely opinionated about the worst possible things. Worst possible things, and very difficult to deal with. So nonetheless, this is a person that made a decision. Not today. 50 years ago he made a decision. On the other hand, the Chazon Ish says, Talmid Chacham, the Torah scholar, he got better over time. Look, when he was 30 years old, when he was 25 years old, he decided that he wants to do as much as possible to help Am Yisrael. Put on tefillin, go to synagogue, say Shema Yisrael, do chuva. Oh, by the time he's 45, you already see this guy spending half of his day on it. By the time he's 60 years old, he's already passed half of his life. You see this guy crying over Jews. He's crying over them on a regular basis. You ask him, why are you crying? He says, I'm crying over the Jewish people. Which ones? All of them. What, the Holocaust? No, today. Why? He said, I saw a bus full of kids go to school, but it was public school, so I'm crying about it. When did you see it? Just now? No, I saw it 5 hours ago, at 8 o'clock in the morning. But he's still crying about it now. Why? Because that's a Jew that made a decision that the Jewish people, the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's everything to him. And that develops over time. And more. Point is that a person has to make a decision. Are you going to acquire the best character trait or the worst character trait? That's simply a decision a person has to make. And many times you see how people deteriorate or improve over time. And that's the beautiful thing. So now, with that being said, the Chazon Ish goes into chapter 2 and he says the following. Indeed, if we sometimes find individuals whose various character traits are not on equal footing, as we have seen that a person might not be led astray or crazed by his desire for delicious food, but will be crazed by in his influence by love of honor and so on. So first and foremost, what is the Chazon Ish really saying here? Because the translation is a little choppy, Baruch Hashem. Chazon Ish is saying the following. He's saying, there are people, lots of people, 8 billion people, Yishtabach Shemolad. Only a few of those people are Jewish people. Something around 20 million that we know of, give or take, and sure enough, many others that we don't know of. But nonetheless, all of those people have character traits. They have good character traits, bad character traits. Everybody has traits. So now, you look at anybody that you want to look at. Jew, Gentile, doesn't make a difference. Young, old, male, female. You're going to look at people, and you're going to see that each one of them has various traits, various character traits. And in reality, those traits are not all the same, meaning the strength of that trait on that person. So if, let's say, for example, this person has a character trait where he craves things. He craves women. He craves food. He has a lust for things. He has a craving. He just, once he gets to this craving, it affects him. It affects him. On the other hand, he has a issue with anger. He has an issue with anger. Now you see, when it comes to anger, he gets angry if you do certain things to him, but it takes a while. You have to move him around a few times before he really gets angry. And sometimes he has the character trait where he doesn't get angry. But if it comes to a woman, doesn't matter who's walking in front of him, he's like a dog, starts chasing her. Can't take it. If he doesn't get what he feels his body needs, he starts losing his mind. On the other hand, says the Chazon Ish, you see the following. You see a person that he has a desire for food, but he doesn't go crazy over it. He eats just like you and me, but even if you show him, listen, we have first course. This course was made by a chef that came all the way from Italy, that made it in this way and that way. And he says, okay, it looks good, but I'm on a diet. I'm not going to have it. Wow. Now he chooses to be on a diet? The chef came all the way from Italy. You're not going to eat this? Listen, it looks delicious. I want to eat it. But the diet is important to me. Okay. Second course. Oh, sir, we know that the Italian food, you liked it, but the diet was important. But now we have Greek food. We have a second chef, came from Greece. All of from Greece, just landed this morning, but he was ready. He had all the ingredients prepared ahead of time. We have this dish, and it has this, and it has that, and it has this, and that. What do you think? He says, it looks absolutely delicious, and in fact, it has my favorite food in it. But I'm not going to have any. Why? I'm on a diet. Remember, I'm on a diet. Psh, wow. Third dish. Sir, listen, we know the food from Italy, it's good, but not enough. Greece, good, not enough. We have from Tripoli. Yo, Tripoli, it's good. They have delicious food. Everything's red, like the Moroccans. No, what do you think? It has this, it has that. That looks good. You know what? I'll take a bite. But just a bite, and then I'm back to the diet. So you barely got him. Like, he has the desire for food. He's not like somebody that's fasting the whole week. But he barely controls himself. Eventually, when you give him the fifth dish, he eats, but he still gave up on 4 different meals before he got to the 5th. Meaning that this desire that he has for food is under strict control. And it seems like this person, he is strong. Strong. But then there says the Chazon Ish, when it comes to honor, he goes crazy. It could be any other character trait, but this is the example the Chazon Ish gave. He's not led astray and goes crazy over his desire for delicious food. But he does go crazy for his love of honor. You see this guy? Sit there, everything is good, and somebody looks at him and says, hey, mister, you have the time? All of a sudden, instead of remembering the time, he remembers he's a doctor. And it doesn't matter to him, or a rabbi, or any other title, It doesn't matter to him to what the time is anymore. What matters to him now is, wait, did you just call me mister? Do you know that I spent the better last of the 15 years in school to earn the title doctor, and you dare call me mister? Do you know that I've spent the last 25 years studying Torah, and I have a keilah, and you dare call me mister instead of rabbi? And all of a sudden his title becomes the most important topic in that restaurant. Why? His honor was hurt. His honor was hurt. Many times people come to the Beit Din and they want a divorce, Hashem Yishmor. 8 out of 10 times it's an issue of honor. 8 out of 10 times. It's not because, he cheated, she cheated. Yeah, that does happen. But nonetheless, many times, I asked her to cook. I got home, she didn't cook. I warned her, I told her, listen, I'm not going to stay married to you if you don't cook for me. She said, if you don't like it, if you're hungry, you can order yourself something to eat. As soon as she answered me that way, that's it. Packed my stuff and I left. I want a divorce. You're going to break up a whole marriage just because she answered you in a silly way? You're going to break up a whole marriage? 3 kids not going to have a father anymore. 3 kids not going to have a mother anymore. They're going to have like friends that they go visit every few weeks. Why? Because she said something smart to you. You said something nasty to her. That's it. Because of that? Over an omelet? That's what you're going to break up a marriage over? Kavod. People want honor. She's going to talk to me the way that I'm supposed to talk to me. Because I am this and I am that, and he's willing to break up a marriage. Unfortunately, this is not a one-time thing, it's a recurring thing. It's a recurring thing that people are willing to literally break everything, destroy everything, just to preserve their honor. Oh, I can't go anymore. I'm not going. Yeah, but what do you mean you're not going? It's your sister's wedding. It's your brother's wedding. You have to go. No, I'm not going. No way. Why? Why not? They invited my other sister and they know I don't talk to her. And how could they invite her? Because she's also his sister. Because he's also our brother. What do you mean? They have to invite her. No, it's either me or her. Oh, so if it's not your way, then it's no way. And you're going to not go because they invited somebody you don't like and that they really can't not invite. Of course, sometimes there are certain things where certain things can happen. If it's an enemy or something, sure, and it's not a member of the family. But the reality is you're looking for honor here. You're not looking for what's right or wrong. You know that what you're asking for is not possible, but you're not going to go because they didn't give you the honor. They gave it to somebody else, at least from your perspective. And many times, these problems get worse and worse. These problems get worse and worse. Needless to say, this is very common in the business world. One of the funniest, strangest business stories I ever heard in my life was actually about one of the richest men in the world today as far as money is concerned, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is known to be as the most successful investor in recent history. And he made a fortune, not just of money, but also consecutive results in his investments over the last several decades. But interestingly enough, the company that is the umbrella owner of all of his investments is called Berkshire Hathaway. And Berkshire Hathaway is a business that he bought, was the first business that he bought. And if you ask him, what's the worst investment you ever made? It was that first one. That first one that's still around to this day that owns all of the successful investments. But that one, the actual business itself was a complete flop, complete disaster. It just survived long enough for him to do other things that saved that and everything else. Why is it such a terrible investment? Simple, he said, I didn't buy it because of a good business. I bought it because I got disrespected. They disrespected him, and therefore he wanted to become an investor in a company. They disrespected him. He ended up buying the entire company and letting go everybody there. So interestingly enough, that in the business world, many times you see very powerful businessmen make really stupid decisions. Why? Because somebody crossed them. Somebody disrespected them. And this is something that's very common among people. It's very common among everybody to a certain extent. People love to be respected and hate to be disrespected. The question is, although that's all normal, you like to be respected, you hate to be disrespected, that's normal. What's not normal is how far people are willing to take it. Oh, wait a minute, how could they talk to me that way? How they could pay him that way? How could they do it that way? I'm here, I'm a veteran, I work harder, I work longer, I'm here for longer. And people have all of these conditions in their head that they assume that everybody else knows. They assume that the company knows that they have a longer tenure than the guy that works down the hall from them, and therefore they should get paid more. They assume that the boss knows how hard they really work and how hard it is for them to meet every single deadline. They assume that everybody knows that they had other offers that are better offers and so on. They assume all this, so the second that they don't get what they want, or better yet, somebody else in the company gets what they want, no, I'm disrespected, I'm out of here, I'm done, no talking, no showing up anymore, and they damaged the company that fed them for all of those years. And unfortunately, Rabotai Karim, Na'ar hayiti v'gam zakanti. I've been young, I've been old, and I've seen this way too many times, of how people take certain things too personal. And instead of simply trying to clarify something, instead of trying to fix something, what do? They spit on you in your face. The hand that fed them, the hand that helped them. No, all of that doesn't matter because of that one time they felt disrespected, which really 9 out of 10 times, it could easily be clarified and it wasn't disrespect, just a misunderstanding. But nonetheless, this is because people yearn for honor. Yearn for honor to such an extent that they're willing to destroy the whole world over it. The whole world over it. Their marriage over it. Their relationship with their kids over it. Their employment over it. Their friendship over it. Everything over it. Why? I got disrespected. I got disrespected. The funniest thing in the world is when you see people that literally you don't even need to look at twice to know that there's not much to respect these people because of their life decisions. But what do they demand first? Respect. Respect. You respect me when you look at me. Why? Because you're 9 feet tall and you have bigger muscles than me. I have to respect you. But that's what they demand. That's what they demand. They demand respect. They don't really know what respect actually means, but nonetheless, they demand it. Oh, why are you talking to me that way? Why are you disrespecting me? Or the best yet, when you talk to certain people that don't have an extensive vocabulary and you simply speak to them normal English. Oh, why are you using those big words? Why are you disrespecting me? What are you talking about? Who disrespected you? I'm speaking English. It's not my fault you didn't get educated, you didn't read a book in your life, and you don't understand. But nonetheless, if you say that to them, expect the right and possibly a left to come at you. So you have to figure out how to get out of that hole. And dealing with different people will help you learn how different people view respect. Nonetheless, everybody wants to be respected. And everybody hates being disrespected. It all depends on how far they're willing to take it. Some people are willing to destroy the whole world over it and literally murder somebody over it. And some people are simply going to walk away. More people, the first rather than the latter, unfortunately. Nonetheless, here we have an example from the Chazon Ish. He says you have some people that their thing that makes them crazy is food or some type of lust for something physical. Other people have a lust for honor. Either way, at times you will see that the character trait or the flaw in character trait is not on equal footing. It's not equal. Where you see on one end, this common flaw that people have, let's say, such as the desire for food, this guy doesn't care for food. In fact, it seems like he doesn't eat. On the other hand, when it comes to respect, when it comes to generosity, when it comes to whatever else that's something, he is crazy. On that thing, he's strong. There, he's the worst person on earth. Doesn't make any sense. Chazon Ish says it actually makes all the sense in the world. Why? The reason for this does not lie in his essence and is not due to his original nature being in favor of only one trait, but rather the fact that since this war is extremely difficult, complete victory is not guaranteed. He says, first and foremost, you should know the fact that he's strong on one character trait and weaker than most even on another should not make you believe even for a moment that in his essence, that who he really is that he's really, really strong on that one and weak on that one. No, has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with that. Rather, this is a very big war. It's very difficult to win. To overcome each character trait is very difficult. So, and he was born with certain things, and rather in his lifelong struggle, it's not a battle that you win in 1 week and you fixed all of your desire for lust or honor and so on. It's a lifelong struggle. And this person has not yet reached a high level of achievement. All he can do is withstand the easier tests and not the greater ones. The tests themselves differ from person to person, though the two people might be on the same age and on the same general level. One may have a nature tending more towards anger than towards craving for food, and therefore his refraining from delicacies precedes his being able to refrain from anger. So he says the following, something extraordinary, literally going inside your mind and your heart and telling you who you really are. The Chazon Ish says that this whole battle of fixing ourselves, as we already discussed last week, of how it all depends on the willpower of a person, where they stand. If they decide to simply leave everything as is or fix everything without ever giving up. Meaning, yes, I know I'm flawed, I know I have an issue, but I'm never going to give up on fixing myself and actually doing something about it. Not just saying it to yourself, actually doing something about it. As soon as you catch yourself failing with something, you do chuva, you fix it. I'm sorry, I have to fix it. And you never ever give up. You never ever give up. That's the best character trait. The worst character trait is simply giving up on fixing it. So here he says this is a lifelong battle. And this person here that we're talking about, that's strong on one end and weak on another, this is not a person that you should think, oh, he's really strong on one end and weak on another. No. This is simply a person that hasn't gotten to any real achievements in his character development yet at all, where he simply is only willing to take on the small tests. The small tests, anything big, he's not going to take. He's not going to take. So how does that work? It's very simple. He knows that they're about to offer food. They offer food, everybody. He says, nah, you know what? Give my meal to somebody else. Somebody's more hungry. Psh, wow, looks like this guy is so generous. Looks like he's so generous. They're giving food out. Everybody else looks hungry. And he's like, no, I'm not eating. I'm okay. Okay, fine. Next thing you know, they say, oh, we're going to give out dessert too. No, I'm good. Give it to somebody else. That too, you don't want dessert? Nothing, something small, a little cookie or something? No, it's not for me. It's not for me. Not for me. Okay. Or we have a choice. You get either some tasty soda or you get a bottle of water. But everybody gets whichever choice. Nah, it's okay. I'll just take the water. Oh, you don't want any tasty soda? Nothing? You don't like it? No, I do like it. I don't want it. Wow, this guy looks like he's got the food thing under control. Doesn't want any food. He gives it to somebody else. He's Mr. Generous. Doesn't want any dessert. Has no sweet tooth. This guy is under control. But the second somebody steps on his shoe, all of a sudden he's in their face and he wants to bite them in the face like a pit bull. What happened? How did you go from Mr. Generous, Mr. Nice, Mr. I want to give everything, I don't need anything, to all of a sudden somebody stepped on your shoe and you want to eat their face? How did you go from that nice little guy to a beast? What happened? Very simple. This guy has no desire, was born without really much of a desire to eat. That's it. So he wasn't generous. He wasn't not looking for a guy doesn't like sweets. Simple. He's just one of those people where his desire to eat, as far as to chase food and so on, is not necessarily as critical. It's not the top of his list. It's there, But it's more dormant in comparison to when you have the desire to be respected, the desire to have his own space, privacy, and so on and so forth. So when did you see it? You saw it. You didn't see it when he was so generous with the food that he didn't get. Simply, he just didn't want it because he wasn't hungry. He just ate 15 minutes before that. He doesn't tell you that he ate 15 minutes before that, but he's telling, no, I don't want it. I'm going to give it to somebody else. Meaning that he's willing to pass this small test because in reality, it's not a big test altogether. He doesn't have a very big desire to begin with. And even more so, him fulfilling this act, doing this minor act of generosity, makes him look like he really has a strong character trait of generosity. But it's really not true, says the Chazon Ish. He says that the tests themselves are differing from person to person. And even if you're going to have two people that are the same age and on the same level overall, one person is going to be born with certain character traits, a certain nature that tends towards, let's say, anger. Another person is going to have a nature that tends towards food. And this is where the problems begin. Why? Because on one end, you'll see that the guy that tends towards the craving of food is never refraining from delicious food. But the guy that is typically much more angry, he's refraining from food. So it looks like the guy that's angry is a much better person. Why? Because you didn't make him angry yet. And he's all of a sudden, he's generous with his food. He doesn't want it. He doesn't go chase the food. They arrive at the wedding. Everybody runs to the buffet. He just sits at his seat. You don't want anything? I'm okay. I'll wait for the waiter to come bring me something. So it looks like this guy's under control. In reality, no, he just simply wasn't born with this weakness in the character trait of food, because there's more weaknesses in his anger. So the second somebody tells him, listen, I'm sorry, but you're sitting in my seat. All of a sudden, the positive trait of not eating goes away. Why? Because now he wants to eat this guy's head that told him that he's sitting in his seat. Whether he's right or wrong is irrelevant. I'm sitting here became mine according to him. So he says here that in a person who tends more towards indulging in delicacies than towards getting angry, refraining from anger will precede refraining from such foods. And so on with other traits. So if you see a guy that is tends towards being one of these people that eats nonstop, he's constantly looking to fill up his sweet tooth. He's constantly looking to go to the best restaurant because he already has been imagining the steak that the restaurant has since 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, the types of people that put pictures on the internet of the food they ate for lunch and for dinner. Those types of people. They're very, very sick. Why? Because these people are not only seeking the world's attention for something that doesn't really deserve attention, what they ate, where they went to, and so on, but they also planned ahead, meaning their whole neurological system is focused instead of doing something actually meaningful. Their whole brain system, all the neurons are connecting with each other with what? They're all drawing a picture of a steak and which restaurant is going to have the best steak for them. This is a very sad state of affairs that we're in the world. But nonetheless, you have certain people that they have this tendency towards indulging in delicious food and not necessarily getting angry. So those types of people, you can see somebody step on their foot or tell them to get out of the chair that they're in because they're sitting in somebody's chair, and you'll see them acting, oh, okay, no problem, sorry. It'll seem as if they are very nice people, that they got everything put together, and so on. Chazon Ish says, no, this is not exactly the case. It's not exactly the case. Why? Because these people, they look like they're strong, but in reality, it's just because their weakness is much greater somewhere else. Their weakness is much greater somewhere else. Now, usually these people are not among those that are struggling to achieve perfection, as they should be, but rather are naturally inclined to be partial partially good that is convenient for them, leaving the rest to human nature, which is like that of a wild beast. He says, so those people that we're describing here, that have a tendency to be very angry or very stingy or evil eye or whatever it is, something horrible, but they're not expressing it 24 hours a day. Many times they can mislead others by a stronger trait that they have that's not really stronger, but simply is just less weak. Meaning, they're really weak when it comes to anger or arrogance or whatever it is. But when it comes to, let's say, the lust for food that we keep bringing up, because it's the easiest thing to give an example on, they don't really have much. They don't have much of a lust for food. They're like a regular, decent person. They want to eat so they don't die. That's it. They don't make a big deal out of it. They're not thinking about what they're going to eat for lunch already in breakfast. They're not. So it looks like they got everything under control. The Chazon Ish says, no. They're simply people that are viewed as a strong, but in reality, they're not even what you think they are. They're also not struggling to achieve perfection. You're never going to see those people as the tzaddikim or anything, but simply going to look at them as these people are regular, normal people. And while the truth is that they are simply doing whatever is good and convenient for them. Whatever is good and convenient for them. Now, why did I say that this is where the problem begins, where you have two people. One has a tendency to be angry, but not much of a tendency to, let's say, chase food. And his fellow could be his co-worker, his brother, his student, his whoever it is. He is the exact opposite. He has no strong tendency to get angry, but food, he's a psychopath. Food, the whole day is about food. What are you going to eat? What are you this? What are that? Why is this a problem? Very, very simple. A person cannot, as the Gemara already said, a person does not see the flaw in himself. But it's very easy for a person to spot any deficiency in other people, even if that deficiency doesn't exist. Meaning, the way that a person judges others is typically based on what they have as a weakness. So when they see that somebody else is, let's say, not getting angry over something, and they're typically an angry person, and they would get angry. They see somebody did something that would typically make them angry, but they're not in the position. They're viewing it from the outside. And they see that person not getting angry, they're dumbfounded. What do you mean? Why isn't he getting angry? What's wrong with him? Why is it? Oh, he's probably planning something. Oh, he's probably really, really mad. He's just not showing it. And they start conjuring up all types of things in their head to justify why this person is not acting like they would had they been in that decision, had they been in that position. Or better yet, very simple, people accuse other people of doing things that they themselves would do if they were in that position. Many times this is when people are jealous of others that have more success in life, and they see that they have a certain position. They say, oh, where did he get that house from? He's probably stealing. If I worked for that company, I'd probably steal too, but he's not going to tell that to anybody. He just tells about how he thinks the other guy is stealing. And that's what he thinks, and that's what he says. And unfortunately, this is because they think since they are angry, therefore everybody else is angry. Since they are jealous, everybody else is jealous. Since they are stingy, everyone else is stingy. And they, in essence, judge everyone as they, in essence, would see themselves behave. So this is problem number one when it comes to people that are not on the path to perfection. They're not on the path to fix themselves. Because if you're not on the path to fix yourself on a regular basis, that means you are on a different path of self-destruction. There's only two paths. There's no neutral. It's either a person is on a path of self-perfection, serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu through his Torah, fixing our character traits, fixing our flaws, and committing to doing it endlessly. Or on the other hand, simply content with wherever you are, you're fine, and thereby, little by little, the whole world becomes wrong by default. The whole world is wrong by default. You didn't get paid on time, it must be his fault. You didn't get called on day, it must be his fault. You didn't get the attention you're supposed to, it must be his fault. Everything must be his fault. It's never your fault. That's what in essence happens. That's what in essence happens to people that are not really on the path to perfecting themselves because they're too focused on the flaws of others. And sometimes they're not even focused on the flaws of others. They just simply think that whatever they're doing is perfectly fine. So it doesn't necessarily need to be just people that are focused on the flaws of others. The worst part is not the flaws of others, but rather the issue of self-perfection, which is, that's false. A person thinking that he's perfectly fine doesn't even need to fix himself anymore. Or the worst yet, the second issue that the Chazon Ish, inside of his words, is trying to teach us, is a person in essence that just chooses the smaller battles. What is that? He knows that he is angry. He knows that food he has a small desire for, not the biggest desire in the world, but he has a small desire. But anger, oh wow, don't get me angry. Don't get me angry. So now, he sees a situation that is available to him, situation where somebody is cut him on the line, and he is really about to get upset. Why? Because the food is right there. The food is right there. He decides, you know what? Let him eat. All of a sudden he becomes Mr. Generous. All of a sudden, he doesn't get mad that somebody cut him on the line to the food. You would think, oh, this guy has worked on his character trait of anger. No. He's just not, his desire for food is not so strong that it's worth the anger. You understand? He is still angry. He's still an angry person, but since this is what the anger would have been about, something that he's not really so connected to, he let it go. So it looks like he didn't get angry, but in reality it's because he doesn't feel like he lost much. On the other hand, if it was the opposite, then it would be much, much worse. So that's another thing. That's another type of problem. Another issue is when a person sees himself as, and possibly rightly so, very good at one thing. Why? He was born a certain way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Chazon Ish says, some people are born this way, some people are born that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created two people. One guy has a very, very big weakness when it comes to anger, and he's relatively decent and not so weak when it comes to, let's say, desire for food. On the other hand, the very same time, another person was created. He's the exact opposite. Anger, no, you're not going to get this guy angry. Why? He's a calm person. He has this calm mentality. He doesn't really let much get to his heart. If something is annoying him, he just simply walks away. You're never going to see him argue, yell, scream. No, he's a calm type of person. On the other hand, food, don't mess with my food. Don't mess with the food or I'm going to eat you instead. He is that type of person. Okay. Now, as you would have it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and he is also mezavik zivugin. He also brings people together, not just husband and wife, but also people, the partnerships you have in life, in business, chavruta, learning Torah, all of these different things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts together. So now, what does he do? He has, let's say, a rabbi and a talmid. Okay? The rabbi, let's say, is the angry one that doesn't care so much about food. And the talmid is generally not an angry person, relatively calm, but food, he's a psychopath. Okay? So now, this talmid, he just started doing chuva. He he is started keeping Shabbat. He doesn't want to be considered a goy anymore. He wants to be a Jew, as the Rav Ovadia writes in Chazon Ovadia in Ilchot Yom Tov. A Jew that is desecrating Shabbat by driving on Shabbat is considered 100% an idol worshiper. 100% an idol worshiper, so much so that the Rav Ovadia writes in his Chazon Ovadia that if you are cooking on Yom Tov, don't invite the people that are Mechaleh Shabbat to your house, because you're not allowed to cook for them for Yom Tov. Needless to say, you're not allowed to cook for them for Shabbat. Many people make it a habit to invite a bunch of secular people to their house on Yom Tov and on Shabbat. Now, this is a problem. If all the people that you have coming to you are Mechaleh Shabbat, you have a very serious problem, because you're not allowed to cook for them. You're not allowed to cook for them. Now, if you're cooking a lot because you have a lot of people coming, and most of them are religious people, and let's say this one guy that's not religious comes also, it's a different story. But nonetheless, because the Jew that's desecrating Shabbat considered 100% a non-Jew, he's considered a idol worshiper, not allowed to cook for him. So now this person heard this. Oh no, I don't want to be a Mechaleh Shabbat anymore. Rabbi, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to start keeping Shabbat. Next thing you know, he puts on tefillin. Next thing you know, he starts learning. The guy becomes religious. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, starts learning the Shas. And the rabbi keeps going, doing what he's doing. One day this Talmid comes to the Bet Midrash, and he sees the rabbi sitting, as usual, at the table, the shtender, and he has books in front of them. And one of the books is about anger. One of the books is about anger. And it says, remove anger from your heart. This Talmid, he's already 3-4 years old, meaning religious 3-4 years old, and he sees the rabbi reading this book, remove anger from your heart. He's thinking to himself, why is the rabbi angry? What does he need to read this book for? He must have a serious problem. I don't have that problem. I don't get angry. Maybe I should get a different rabbi that's not so angry. And he starts judging his rabbi because he figures, wait, if I don't get angry and he does, he's probably not the right fit for me. Probably what happened, he was sent to the world for me to start to do chuva. He's a good messenger, but I've surpassed him. Why? Because he's an angry little gremlin, and I am not an angry. Calm, collected. The Torah is good to me. Torah is good to me. It's already softened my character. I don't need to deal with this type of stuff. I need to go to a bigger Talmid Chacham. And until I find a bigger Talmid Chacham, I'll be my own rabbi. And that's what happens. And that's how this person that did tshuva brings destruction to his life. How? Is arrogance. Is arrogance in simply thinking that everybody's supposed to be like him. And everyone is like him. And that's a reality. He doesn't realize, yes, you're not angry, not because the Torah softened you. You're not angry because HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply had mercy on you and he made your weakness somewhere else. You're weak when it comes to anger, just not the same level as you are weak when it comes to something else. And how do you know it? Simple. 15 minutes later, he's wasting seed. A half hour later, he is, doesn't want to buy his wife anything for her birthday. An hour and a half later, he curses out his boss. 6 hours later, he decides to play video games instead of learning Torah. And so he sees the weakness is expressed elsewhere, but instead of looking at his own weakness, he saw weakness in someone else and thought it is and turned somebody else's weakness into his own strength, which is a disaster and a half. So now a person needs to know that not everybody, and in fact nobody, is going to be exactly like you. Everyone has different weaknesses and different strengths. So when a person sees that someone else is struggling with something, it doesn't necessarily by default make them the worst person on earth. They're weak in that particular regards, And even though you yourself don't know why they got so angry, or you don't know why they go crazy over food, or you don't know why they do such and such, because you don't have that same inclination, it doesn't by default make you better. Because you weren't tested in the same thing. Had you been tested in the same thing, in your weakness, you would fall too. So this is also another reason why a person should never, ever judge his fellow unless he put himself in the same shoes. And that's what the Gemara says. You can't judge your fellow unless you put yourself in the same position. Now, of course, the average person thinks, oh, I put myself in the same position and I wouldn't get mad. No, putting yourself in the same position doesn't mean put yourself literally in the same position when you're not weak in the same thing. If, let's say, for example, one guy was caught committing adultery, okay? He committed adultery, horrible sin. He's going to Gehinnom for it unless he does chuva. And if she's pregnant, he has a really, really serious problem because now he's going to have a baby that's out of wedlock, and surely his existing wife is not going to be happy. And if this other girl is married, then it's a mamzer. He has a tragedy on his hand. But you looking at this person that just committed adultery and judging him is not right. Why? Because you aren't judged the same thing. You're going to say, wait a minute, I would never cheat on my wife. You're right. You would never cheat on your wife. But you may do something else. You may cheat on your boss. You may cheat on your company. You may cheat on your taxes. You may cheat on something else. Perhaps not adultery because your desire in that aspect or your weakness in that aspect is not as weak as his is. But your weakness when it comes to, let's say, money is just as weak. So you're judging him that he fell for some beautiful girl and she's not his wife, and in your eyes, he's the worst person on earth. But what about when you had that opportunity and $5 million could have easily gone to your bank account and nobody would have ever known until it was too late and you were in the Bahamas somewhere? What did you do then? Would you fall? Would you not fall? Now, before the test comes, everybody passes. No, I would never do it. But when push comes to shove and the moment of truth comes, that's when you really know who you really are. So the first thing first is when the sages teach us not to judge another person unless you're in their shoes, they don't actually mean unless you're literally in their shoes, because surely you may not have the same inclination as him. You may not have the same inclination, but put yourself in the same shoes with that same weakness or strength that you have. That's the thing. So if he's strong in one thing and he's put up to the test, and you're just as strong in one thing and you're put up to the test, that's an even test. Even if one is eating and the other one is drinking, one is anger and the other one is generosity. It doesn't make a difference. The point is strength versus strength, weakness versus weakness. You cannot judge a person based on something that he's weak and you're strong in. You have to judge based weakness versus weakness. And that's why we really can't judge anybody. Why? Because any one of us that really introspects, really does some introspection, really does some actual review of ourselves, truth is, we find so many weaknesses, we get too embarrassed to judge anybody else. Anyone that actually looks at who they really are. I'm not talking about who you really are when you're on stage. You got your muscles flexed. You're the top of the company. You're the best this and you're best that. And everyone is just can't wait to give you a high five because you're just so good at what you do. No! I'm talking about weakness. I'm talking about when you're miserable. I'm talking about when you just screwed up something that unfortunately is repeatedly terrible in your hands. Everybody else succeeds except you. You know how weak you are in that particular case. Go look at those few things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things, whatever it is. Each one of us has these things. When a person truly looks at those weaknesses, he has no guts left to judge anybody else. No guts left. Why? If anybody would ever know the weakness that I have, how much embarrassment would it bring me? Needless to say, who am I to go judge somebody else when I have so many of my own weaknesses? So yes, I don't have his weaknesses and I don't have her weaknesses, but I have my own weaknesses. And what ends up happening is many times a person focuses on what? On his strength and their weaknesses. And that's what makes a person corrupt. That's what makes a person corrupt. So a person cannot do that to themselves, not only because it's a corrupt personality as far as it's a terrible personality to judge others and not yourself, but also it's literally corrupting your own time in this world and putting yourself on a path of simply living a lie. Living a lie that everyone else is in the wrong and you're in the right. And it makes a person very detestable. So one of the things that happens at times is that you'll see it, that same example that I just made, where a Talmid will see that the rabbi that helped him, the rabbi that taught him, the rabbi that raised him, he is teaching something or learning something that is common flaw in others, but not in him. And automatically assumes, oh, if this is not for me, then everything else is also not for me. And this is one of the things that a person has to run away from. Why? Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent you this rabbi to spark up your neshama, surely that rabbi can do a little bit more than that. Surely that rabbi can do a little bit more than that. You just have to really start evaluating where you stand. I always ask people when they ask me questions, what did your rabbi tell you? And many times I hear the response of either they didn't ask their rabbi or they don't have a rabbi. Both are sad state of affairs. Why? Because if you didn't ask your rabbi, that means that you don't really treat your rabbi as your rabbi. And if you don't have a rabbi, then you don't understand what it means to have a rabbi. And therefore, no answer is really going to satisfy you permanently. There's always going to be an issue. So a person needs to know that the more arrogant a person is, the less likely they are to succeed in even doing the minimum of minimum requirements. Because the minimum of minimum requirements, as far as our servitude of Hashem, require us to learn from somebody. And not just somebody today and somebody else tomorrow and somebody else the next day. And like a lot of people, they like to shop around. They want to hear 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 speakers. Every day they have a lineup. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they hear this lineup of speakers. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they hear this lineup of speakers. And this is not good. This is not good. Why? Number one, there's different customs, there's different strategies, there's different ways of doing things. And needless to say, you also have to have a rabbi that's going to be the main source of your knowledge. When you have so many different things playing at you at the same time, you're in essence learning a lot about nothing. And that's what in essence ends up happening. You just have a lot of information about very few things. You have a lot of information about a lot of different things, but in reality, you don't know anything with actual real level of expertise. So a person needs to know that many times that comes because of their arrogance of when they don't view that anyone is good enough for them. Furthermore, that when a person is not honest with themselves and they simply think that everyone is in essence they're in the same has the same thoughts as them, the same weaknesses as them, they develop a perspective that is wrong by default. Like their perspective is wrong by default. Why? Because their perspective is assuming things that are not common. Okay, so they see that, let's say for example, because they believe that anytime there is let's say traffic, that's because there was an accident. They assume that. The truth is, there are traffic for many reasons. Not just because there's an accident. They assume anytime there is marriage issues, that's because of money. True, there are many marriages that have issues because of money, but that's not the only reason. Sometimes it's adultery, sometimes because of children, sometimes because of lack of children, sometimes because of they grew differently, they grew separately as far as grew apart spiritually, and so on and so forth. But when a person assumes that the world is exactly as they see it, they're going to default wrong more times than not. And there's a funny joke that I heard from Rabbi Ephraim that teaches a lot of MUSSAR, but nonetheless, it is a joke where this guy was not exactly very aware of the magnitude of his crimes, and was one of these people that simply assumed that the world is exactly as he saw it. And one day, he decided to do a seance to bring his father back and talk to his father. So he did the seance, and his father's talking to him. He says, "So Abba, what are you doing up there in the morning?" So his father answers him, says, "Oh, every morning I eat a little bit, and then I go running." Psh, wow, nice. "Abba, what do you do in the afternoon over there?" So his father responds, "Every afternoon, I eat a little bit, and then I go running some more." Shh, wow, that's nice. Good for you. What about at night? What do you do at nights over there? His father answers him, "Every night, I eat a little bit, and then I go running." He's like, "Wow, what a life. That's how it is. Everybody over there in Gan Eden, in heaven, everybody's there." His father says to him, "What heaven? What are you talking about? Because of all of my sins, I got reincarnated as a rabbit in Australia." So a person, he is delusional. He thinks, "Oh, surely because it's my father, he's going to heaven." So if he's saying he's eating a little bit and then he's running, oh, that's because that's what I want to do. That's what I think I want to do. That's his perspective. It's a funny joke you can use in a lot of different aspects, in a lot of different ways, but it has a lot of truth into it. Has a lot of truth into it that we can learn from. A person thinks that just because they have a certain truth, therefore that truth stands for everyone. That truth is the same for everyone. And it's simply not the case. The only truth that's eternal, the only truth that's unchangeable is the Torah itself. But even the Torah itself has 70 different facets that if a person learns and toils over the Torah, they'll see that in order for a person to truly get to the bottom line truth, it's not the Torah that you're learning, but rather the character development. The character development, because a person could literally know a lot of Torah, so much so that he can himself paskin something and still get it wrong. And there was an example like this. An example like this that happened years ago by one of the Gdolei Ador, Rabbi Yoshua Falik HaKohen. This was mentioned and written in the Sefer by Rav Ovadia Alav Shalom, Anaf Etz Avot. And he brings under the Mishnah that tells us that talks about how people are supposed to accept judgment upon themselves and so on. It's the first chapter of 8th Mishnah. He says that there was one time this Gdol Ador, Rav Yeshua Falik HaKohen, who wrote Sefer Meirat Enaim. And this Sefer Meirat Enaim was a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat. Brought a lot of beautiful insights clarifying the Shulchan Aruch. But one time, there was a Din Torah. A Din Torah that Rav Falik had to go to the Bet Din for. And of course, when a Talmid Chacham comes to the Bet Din, he doesn't come like people go to court and they just simply sit there, laugh while the camera is pointing at them, waiting for their lawyer to create some type of argument to make them win. No. They come to Din Torah and they bring all of their proofs. Not just the evidence, but also proofs from the Torah. Different, this is the halacha over here, this is the source here, this is what I relied on, this is it. Because why? If you are going to go so far with this issue to the point where you're going to go to, instead of coming to an agreement with the other party, you're going to go to a judicial court, a din Torah, that means you have to have something to walk on, not something to stand on, not just your opinion versus his opinion. You have something reliable. You have to have a certain halacha, a certain posek, a certain something that you're relying on, that you're going to bring to the court to show them what justified your decision, to say what you're saying up to the point where you arrived here in the court. Why are you not changeable? So you have to come. You're coming with some sources. And of course, if the other party is also a Talmid Chacham, surely they're going to come with their sources also. Now, of course, many times people are not Talmidei Chachamim and they're coming simply with their stories. But if someone is a Torah scholar, it's very common for them to bring their sources with them. This is the Gemara here. This is what I relied on here in the Halacha and Shulchan Aruch and so on. So, of course, when you have the Gdol Ador, Rabbi Yoshua Falik, a Kohen coming to the Bet Din, expect a whole realm of sources. Now, in those days, didn't have the WhatsApps and the Facebooks and the social media where everyone knew what everybody looked like. So, for all intents and purposes, the Bet Din had no idea who is in the courtroom. They didn't know who he was. All they know is they have two Jews are fighting a case against each other. Is a disagreement? No problem. The Mishnah says, when you're a judge, look at these two people as they're both wicked. After you finish the case, you give them the judgment, and they accept the judgment on themselves, regardless of which side it went to. Once they accepted it, they're both righteous. They're both your brothers again. But before that, you have to look at them as if they're both wicked, as if they're both guilty. You don't know which one is which. This is also the reason why some of the Chachamim would not even look at the faces of the people. But there's also a Masoret that you should look at the faces of the people, because there's a lot to learn in regards to whether they're telling the truth or not, and so on. Needless to say, the story continues with Rav Falik, one of the Gedolei Ador, wrote commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. He is in a Din Torah. He comes to the Din Torah and he gives the judge all of the sources. And to his surprise, the judge reviews the sources, hears the other side, and judges the case against Rav Falik. Rav Falik is, I don't understand. How can you judge against me? I brought you clear sources that I'm right. The judge tells him, yes, you're right. You're right that you brought very strong sources that your case is right. But what could I do? That there is a new Sefer that came out called Sefer Meirat Einayim, where the Chacham over there brought all of your sources and disproved all of them when he paskin halacha. So that's what I'm ruling by. Rav Falik couldn't believe his ears. He says, what? Look how wise the words of the sages are, that a person does not see the obligation in himself, that I myself forgot what I paskined and what I disproved because I was involved in the case, because of my own bias. How wise are the sages? So this is a real life example. And of course, it's not the only one. There are endless others the Chachamim bring. And of course, Rav Ovadia, that sat in a Bet Din for many, many years, and had endless cases, and literally an endless Torah, also brings other stories in his lectures, in his books, and his Anaf Etz Avot also brings another extraordinary story, where the famous yeshivot of Mir and Novardok had a disagreement with each other. So, these two famous yeshivot come to the Bet Din of Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin. And they want Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin to judge the case between Yeshivat Mir and Yeshivat Novardok. After Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin hears the case, he makes the judgment against Yeshivat Novardok and for Yeshivat Mir. Of course, the chief rabbi of Novardok, that was at the Bet Din, Rav David, he was very upset. Very upset that Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin ruled against him. And Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin knew this, and wanted to make it up to him in some way, to make him understand that it's what he did is 100% the correct thing to do. But you can't talk to somebody when they're upset. You can't reason with them. And also, it's not necessarily something so simple to do. But, as you would have it, some time passed, and Rabbi Chaim Volozhin ran into Rav David of Novardok, and he told him, listen, Kvod Rav, please, I have so many things going on right now that I can't attend to a certain case where these two people are arguing with each other and they have an issue and they need a dayan. Would you do me a big chesed and take the case for me? Rav David says, sure, Kvod Rav, no problem. Thank you for thinking of me to give me the case. So, I'll send him to you. So, as you would have it, he sends him those two people, and they have the case, and Rav David takes care of the case and rules accordingly. Some more time passes, and Rabbi Chaim Volozhin meets up with Rav David again. How are you? How are you? All of the different things. And he says to him, by the way, some time ago when I brought you that case, how did it go? Everything went okay? You just wanted to check on the case, if everything went okay. Oh yes, for the Rab, you have nothing to worry about. I ruled. The issue was, one guy was doing this, the other guy said that. Long story short, I ruled in the favor of that one. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin said, wow, you ruled the right way. It's very, very good. Chazak u'ba'uch. You ruled according to the Torah. Rav David says, thank you, Kvod Rav. Appreciate it for the chizuk. And then Rabbi Chaim Volozhin thinks to himself for a second, he goes, wait a minute, Rav David, come to think of it, do you think you can use the same logic that you used to rule in that case for your case that you had, that I was sitting as the Dayan, when you were going against YESHIVA of Mir? Rav David thinks for a moment and says, wow, Kvod Rav, you're right. You're right. You are 100% right. I'm sorry that I doubted you. I'm sorry that I was upset at you all this time. You, Kvod Rav, ruled righteously. You're right. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says to him, no need for you to apologize. It's okay. Surely the Torah tells us, our Chachamim tell us, that a person does not see an obligation himself. A person is incapable of seeing the deficiency in himself when he is in the fire himself. It's impossible for some people. It's not such an easy thing. Surely there's no worries. Okay, and they parted ways. Sometime later, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin passed away. And of course, all of the Chachamim came, and Rav David among them. And after the funeral, he saw those two guys that he judged the case between them. He says, oh, you were Talmidim of Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. Yeah, remember me? I was the judge. Sure, Kvod Rav. How are you? Yeah, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin was a big Chacham. Yeah. He's like, everything worked out between you guys? Did you ever pay each other what you were supposed to pay? So the guy tells them, okay, now that the Rav has passed away, now I can tell you the story. He says, what story? He says, the truth is, we didn't have a case between each other. The truth is, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin was so pained that you would think that he ruled against the Torah, that it offended you, that he took it upon himself to find a way to make you see the truth, without being so obvious about it. So what did he do? We were Talmidim in his yeshiva, and he trained us how to speak to each other in order to create a fake case. And he sat with us for hours and hours to rehearse the whole case. What is he going to say? What is he going to say? How is he going to say? And eventually to go to you, after he tells us it's time to go to you, and actually go and do this case. Rav David of Novardok says, I knew that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin was a big chacham,
But now I know he was also a big tzaddik too. A big tzaddik too. This, Rabotai, is literally the treasures that you find in the Torah are endless. But at the same token, one of the beautiful things about our Torah, it doesn't just talk about fairy tales of success stories. It talks about the flaws in everyone, from the greatest to the worst. And one of the beautiful things that this allows a person to do is not feel alone when you have a flaw yourself, whether that flaw is one thing or another. Because surely other people in the world that got to much higher level of holiness than you did also had that flaw. And in reality, the only difference between you and them is that simple decision we talked about last week. The decision of whether to let this flaw continue by giving up and deciding I'm not going to fix it. I was born angry. I was born stingy. I'm so stingy, even compliments I don't give. I'm so arrogant that even to give clap somebody honor when he's the only one on stage, I don't do. I'm so arrogant and so this that I'm just going to stay that way. That is itself spiritual suicide. The righteous person, on the other hand, what does he do? He says, yes, I have a flaw here, I have a flaw there, I have a flaw a lot of places. My decision is, I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to let myself continue this way. The next time I see that I'm angry, next time I see I'm expressing arrogance, next time I see I'm careless, next time I see I'm insensitive, next time I see that I'm selfish in one way or another, I catch myself, I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to do whatever I can to correct it. Yes, the correction hurts. Sometimes it's self-effacement. Sometimes it is it's lowering yourself to levels you never even thought you would be. Sometimes it's this, sometimes that. But guess what? That pain of chuva is much better than the pain of suffering in Shamayim. Because the pain of chuva is the pain of a tikkun. And the pain of a tikkun, for anyone that learned a little bit about tikkunim, that what happens in Shamayim, when the Mekubalim do tikkunim for certain neshamot, those tikkunim hurt like fire on skin. But after that fire ends, that klipa, that is in essence the sin, is removed from that soul, and that feels really good. That feels extraordinary relief. So when a person is embarrassed because they stuck to their lies, that pain doesn't go away. It actually just gets worse. But when a person admits guilt as a form of apology, I'm sorry, I failed. It hurts, it burns, but only temporarily. After you finish, it feels good. Why? I did it. I achieved something. I overcame the test. There's a extraordinary fulfillment, pleasure there that is impossible to get in anywhere else. So yes, there is pain to do tshuva, but that pain is preceding the pleasure that will eventually come. On the other hand, ignoring that pain will only bring much greater pain. That is only going to get greater over time, both in this world and the next. So one way or another there is pain, but only one of them is a pain that leads to good things. Good things for the person, good things for the world around that person, good things all around. And Baruch Hashem, this is the beauty of tshuva, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure that our sages were not perfect. They all went through a process. They all went through ups. They all went through downs. But the one thing that made each and every single one of them righteous was that they committed to improving themselves, making themselves perfect to the best of their abilities in their servitude of HaShem. So if that meant removing anger from their heart, or arrogance, or stinginess, or whatever other character flaw that they have, whatever other lust that they had, whatever thing that was forbidden that they had, they would remove it as fast as they possibly could. And if they didn't succeed the first time, they would try again and again and again and never give up. And that's why at the end, when people see all of the great sages in their old age, or they see them from the perspective of their books, Rav Hutner alav Shalom used to say, it's not really the right perspective. You think that that sage that you're looking at was always like that he never had any tests, that he was always perfect, that he was always this righteous, and he always knew all this information, and he always was this generous, and he was always this happy. No. He is a human being just like you, and the difference is he committed to serving Hashem non-stop, and eventually that's what happened. That means you can do the same thing. If you just look at the end result of these sages, you're not going to learn very much, because most of the things that they're doing at their peak are not relevant to us. We can't do them. But you should know that none of them just got there by default. None of them got there with no reason. Even the Chafetz Chaim, that was Kodesh Kodeshim, that's everybody's grandfather. The Chafetz Chaim went through endless difficulties, endless tests that are impossible for people to even think about. One simple thing I can tell you about is that on top of my head is a simple test of who to marry. Who to marry. Today, people ask, oh, Rabbi, can you help me with a shidduch? I need a shidduch. I'm already 25. I'm already 35. I'm already 45. What happened to you the last 40 years? How come you didn't look for a shidduch? All of a sudden you woke up? No problem. Send a resume. We'll try to do what we can. And what happens is, many times, literally 9 out of 10 times, whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu has mercy on us and gives us a match, say, oh, this person is that age, that person is the same age. This person is this, that person is that. It looks like it's a match. There's a couple of year difference between the two, give or take, up or down. But nonetheless, it looks like a similar match. The biggest thing about a match is to make sure there's the right ideology. Everything else is easier. Nonetheless, you make a match. You say, okay, why don't you think about this one? What do you think? And what do they say? Yeah, she is too old for me. Too old for you? What do you mean she's too old for you? She's your age. No, Rabbi, she's 4 years older than me. You're making it like she's a grandmother. What do you mean? You're 35, she's 39. It's the same thing. No, I don't think so. And literally, everything else about this person is meaningless. Why? Because the number, the date of birth says something. Or the opposite. Oh, Rabbi, what? No, it's not a good match for me. Why not? Look, Rabbi, he's an accountant. I'm not interested in accountants. What are you interested in? Something maybe somebody more respectable. What's wrong with accountants? No, I like accountants. Just like, somebody, maybe an entrepreneur, maybe invented something. I like scientists. Do you have scientists? Ribono Shalom, what do you think you're doing? You're getting a sandwich, putting trina on it, hummus on it, and some harif? It's a person, for heaven's sake. What difference does it make what career he has? No, people are picky. What about the Chafetz Chaim? I'll tell you what the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim was very dedicated to Torah, already from a young age. Went to YESHIVA, learned Torah, and the tragedy that happened in his life is that his father died. His father died, and of course, as you would have it, a time passed, and his mom got remarried to a very righteous person. And the Chafetz Chaim, when he was still a very young man, but at marriageable age, around 20 years old, 19 years old, people started sending their offers to marry this extraordinary Chacham. Everyone already knew this guy is going to be something special. Everyone wanted their daughters to marry him because they knew he's going to be the Gdol Adol. He already had that reputation that he's something very, very special, and very wealthy people would literally send offers with money that they would give him, not only the daughter and everything, but also the life, that he never has to work a regular job. He can learn Torah for the rest of his life. One time, as the offers are coming in, the Chafetz Chaim, Israel Meir, is listening to an argument between his mother and her new husband. Over what? The new husband was a very righteous man. wants the Chafetz Chaim, wants Israel Meir, her son, to marry his daughter. He has a daughter that's a good tzadikah, everything is good. And the mom says, no, why should my son marry your daughter? First of all, she's much older than him, 10 years older than him or something like that, or maybe more. You know, she's much older than him. And on top of it, you don't have any money. He's being offered lots of money. He could sit and learn Torah and comfort and so. Why should he marry your daughter? Yeah, but she's righteous, she's tzadikah. Yes, but I understand she's tzadikah and everything is good, but I have to worry about my son too. Chafetz Chaim heard this, went to his mother, says, Ima, I want to marry his daughter. Surprising his mom. What? You ever see her? I don't need to see her. She's righteous. She's tznuah. She's modest. It's perfect. I don't care about all this offers that people are giving me as far as money and all that stuff. Doesn't make a difference to me. And the age difference also doesn't make a difference to me. Why? She's tznuah. She's modest. It's good. His mom said to him, yeah, but you have Ima. I want to marry her. Please. Just don't let it cause a fight between you and your husband. Why am I going to marry her? Well, number one, she has the character trait that I need. She's tznuah, she's modest. She's going to let me learn Torah. Perfect. She's older, she's younger, money, no money, that doesn't make a difference. But even more than all of this, if it's going to cause you and your new husband not to fight, perfect. I'm also fulfilling a mitzvah of kibud avayim. That's all I need to do in my life. And guess what? The Chafetz Chaim had an extraordinary marriage. Alvay on all of Am Yisrael to have such marriage. His wife let him learn Torah, grow in Torah, brought him kids, bracha, atzlacha, all the things you could possibly imagine. Why? Making a decision for the right reason. By looking at the perspective of the Torah and not the perspective of the Yetzer Hara. Many times we look at the perspective of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara that's telling us that we deserve such and such, that we need such and such. In reality, the Torah tells us, no. All of those things you need, all of those things you desire, they're not good for you. There are things that Torah tells you, that's what's good for you. And sometimes you don't see it. But when you trust the Torah and its sages, you're guaranteed to succeed. Sometimes it'll go against your logic. Sometimes it's hard to accept. But nonetheless, it's proven to succeed time and time again. And praiseworthy are the people that follow the way of the Torah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.